Last week I spoke of how that gospel, that Sunday, reframed for me, and perhaps for you too, my attitude going into this election. My attitude, frankly, has not been very good. And that gospel story just dropped right down into the middle of my turmoil about this whole thing. And hearing those words in that gospel, I have to say, healed something in me, healed something in my attitude, by calling me into the midst of this turmoil to gratitude. My attitude is very different than it was before hearing that story from Luke. Very different. I spoke then of my gratitude that I can vote and of the work that will remain long after this election in just 30 days. Because the solution to our problems will not be in one election or in one candidate. That long-anticipated debate at Washington University is behind us now, and another looms this Wednesday. And the question unaddressed still is, how do we vote this year? And that question for us who call themselves Catholic and Christian, that question becomes for us, what choice will most bring about the kingdom of God? What choice will most further the values of the kingdom of God, like mutuality and vulnerability and inclusion and justice and a special concern for the lonely and the poor and they who have been marginalized and shamed by the loss of the land? The kingdom of God Jesus proclaimed in word and in action, and for which he gave his life. But first, before anything else, let me be clear. Let me be clear right here at the beginning. No priest, no bishop, no pope can ever tell you who to vote for. And let me apologize outright for any who ever have. I'm really sorry that you had to hear that. And let me be clear about one other thing. A politician's record, not rhetoric, is what really counts. And even if a politician has proved his or her commitment to the issues of concern, we must still ask, how much will that person likely be able to accomplish toward those ends? Voting for a candidate who will probably not be in a strong position to significantly move a particular issue forward might make me feel good, but it won't really make much difference. Furthermore, many politicians who support the Catholic Church's stand in one issue often work against the Catholic Church's stand on other issues. Single-issue voting has serious flaws. And it's not the Catholic position. Single-issue voting isn't. Instead, Catholics are called to consider the big picture. These are the words of the United States bishops. Quote, "As Catholics, we are not single-issue voters. A candidate's position on a single issue is not sufficient to guarantee a voter's support. All deserve our care, you see. Not just the unborn, not just the poor, not just the hungry, not just the homeless, not just the war-torn, not just the undocumented, not just the medically uninsured, not just condemned prisoners, not just the environment, and not just future generations, but all the above. All the above deserve our care. Everyone's life and dignity needs to be fully protected and respected. The social doctrine of the Catholic Church links social justice and peace and pro-life. It doesn't rank them. And so it falls to us in 2016, and every day really, to help the world Jesus lived for and died for to come about in our day. All without exception, you would agree, have the right to life and liberty in the pursuit of happiness. And how we treat them matters. And when we don't, they suffer the most. And how we treat the earth matters. The Catholic Christian understanding of life is that the entire reason for living is towards establishing the reign of God on this earth and nothing more. In other words, the good of all, not just our own selves, or our own family, or our own nation. We live and work for the good of all. And to accomplish that, there's no perfect candidate. There's no perfect political party. There never has been. There never will be. There's no perfect country, and there are no perfect voters. Our vote this year will be a compromise. It's always been a compromise. And in an imperfect world, that's perfectly okay. How do we choose then? How do we go about making this choice as we vote for president or governor or other local leaders? Well, I can't tell you who to vote for, but God can. And I recommend you start with the Bible. I recommend that every day you dedicate 15 minutes or so. Pick up that Bible from now to the election, and for 15 minutes a day, read one of the 4 Gospels. Perhaps you could choose Luke, since that's the Gospel, the season of Luke we are in right now. And read the entire book of Luke. And find yourself, mind and heart, steeped in what Jesus stood for in that Gospel. And who Jesus stood for in that Gospel. In his vision, the things that mattered to him, so that when we vote in 30 days, we will stand there in that booth with what he stood, where he stood in his day. And if you're a prayer, all 3 readings this morning are a call to prayer. If you're a prayer, pray. Take extra time every day to focus on the living God in your life and open yourself to the God who is love. And if in your praying you have a spiritual practice like contemplation, I hope you keep it up these days, because I implore you, as a contemplative human being, to listen to your spiritual heart when you enter that booth. And if you listen, attend to your spiritual heart and vote from that higher consciousness, I think you'll have a sense of the candidates who at least sporadically listen and be able to respond from that deeper place of your heart. And pray for our leaders. Pray for them. Persist in your prayer for them, no matter your feelings. Persist in your prayer for them as surely as that widow persisted in her prayer for what she knew needed to happen. As surely as Aaron and Amalek held up the hands of Moses, persist in your prayer, holding up the hands of our leaders when theirs are too weak to carry us. Pray for them to awaken and sink deeper into the heart of Jesus. And pray for the voters to listen with that contemplative heart. Pray for the voters around you right now to listen from that same deep place. And secondly, remember, people can disagree about the best way forward. People can reasonably disagree on how to bring about the kingdom of God in the best way possible. Reasonable people can disagree on the best way to get there. We need to remember that, especially when our opinions are challenged and when disagreeable people disagree with us. Reasonable people can disagree this year. We should always be able to say, in the end, after any sort of conversation or debate or argument, I understand where you're coming from now. Thank you for explaining. And then feel absolutely free to continue to disagree. Yes, it matters. It matters how we treat the little and the least among us. It matters how we treat this good earth. And finally, it matters how you and I treat each other along the way. God is not nearly as interested in how we vote as God is interested in how we treat each other for the next 30 days especially. Some of the meanness and demonizing and calling people's names hurts my heart. Mean-spirited posts on social media will create this mean energy in us. And it's going to take a very free, very spiritually grounded human being to not put that venom back out there into the world. We don't need that hatred anymore in this country. And for the sake of our souls, your souls and mine, block them. Serious as a heart attack. Block them. My friends, we are in this together right now, and we're walking this planet together right now, and we have to figure out how to do this with people we don't like and with people we disagree with. Because you see, it matters how we treat each other along the way. It matters a lot. We are not going to be the elected ones this year. Not a one of us will end up president or pope. It seems we spend most of our lives changing diapers and keeping peace between our children and fixing leaky faucets, stuck in traffic, doing our homework and going to class. But it matters to God that we use our talents. It matters to God how we live our lives as we move through these days. It matters hugely to God. And so let me conclude with a little test. I want to leave you with these questions, and if you know the answer, I invite you to raise your hand. What was the name of Abraham's Lincoln's mom and dad who first taught him right from wrong? I said raise your hand. Okay, nobody got it. Who here knows the names of Albert Einstein's arithmetic teacher when he was 10 years old? Who taught Pope Francis religion when he was 11 years old? And finally, who taught Beethoven his music lessons when he was a kid? The fact is, we don't know. And that's good, because that's the point. It's the ordinary people. It's the ordinary people living their lives well, whose names are never on the election basket, who change the world by doing what they do and doing it the best way they know how. And so you and so me. You know, we're not going to be voting for Jesus as president. But we can vote for what he stood for. And we can live and love like Jesus did. And that matters. very much. That matters.